Hi, this is Ashley, and welcome to the Miracle Mama Show. Miracle Mamas has been founded just to really bring awareness to women and women health issues, maternal health issues, and really raising the bar for women and moms and families everywhere. So on the Miracle Mama Show, I bring guests in, whether they're maternal health advocates or other moms themselves about their experiences. But I want to talk today about my own experiences. And I have given birth 3 times, and through those 3 experiences, they were different. So I've experienced having a vaginal delivery with an epidural, a vaginal delivery without an epidural, and a C-section, a caesarean section. So I'll give you my experiences as a mom. So it's not healthcare advice, it's not from an HCP, it's just an experience from a mom. And I think if this would have been helpful, kind of going back for myself, what are the different options? And there's other ways, of course, to give birth, but these are the 3 experiences that I had, and they were really completely different experiences. So I'll give you the pros and the cons, and please leave a comment below if you have any questions or anything to add. I love to hear comments. And so I'll just get started. So 11 years ago, I gave birth to my daughter, Grace. Grace was 8 pounds, 4 ounces. I'm rolling up my sleeves like I'm going to get to labor here. But 8 pounds, 4 ounces. I was, 29 when I gave birth. So it was a vaginal delivery. I went into labor. I felt the drop around 7:30 at night, and I didn't go to the hospital until my contractions were about 5 minutes apart, so that was around 5 in the morning. And when I got there, probably within 45 minutes, I received my epidural, which I wanted very badly. My mom had an epidural. She swore by them. She had them both for my sister and myself, and I said, sign me up. So I got one, and there was a good amount of, pain in the back, because it's a pretty good sized needle, but I welcomed the pain because it took away from the pain of the labor. So it was very doable for me. I felt the epidural kick in right away, and it stayed. And it stayed for about, around 3 to 4 hours, and eventually it went away. And the anesthesiologist said, it could be the placement of the epidural. Maybe it's not placed in the right way. So they took the needle out and reinserted again. And it worked. And then it faded away. And then they took the needle out, and then they reinserted a 3rd time. At that point, it's pretty painful. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want this to be reinserted anymore. Let's just, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then we're just going to go with it. So they, the nurses and doctors agreed, and it was able to work. I gave birth around 2:30 in the afternoon. The doctor did have to cut just a little bit, so I had some stitches, not many. Gracie came out very healthy, normal. It was very. There was really no complications for her. There were no complications for her, other than a little bit of a high fever, and that was because she was hanging out a little too long on my birth canal, and that's a separate story. So the pros for having epidural is that it was pretty pain-free, I would say. You could watch TV, you could watch a magazine, I guess you could nap. I had everybody and their mother in the room, so I didn't do any of that. But that was a great part of it. The cons, I would say, for an epidural would be, for myself, and this is my own experience, is that when it came time to push, I just kept pushing. I didn't even know if I was pushing, because you can't really feel your muscles. I couldn't feel my muscles. So I just kept pushing, and I kept going. And what I did was I pushed very hard for a very long period of time, and you can do damage to your rear. So you can get things like hemorrhoids, and those can be quite large. and quite painful. So the con there is that you're going to have for me, I had a difficult recovery. Everybody is different. Like my mom, she had 2 epidurals for each of her kids. She didn't experience any of that. I know women that have epidurals and they're fine. They don't experience any of that. That was just my own experience. The other thing I experienced with the epidural is, and this could just be, this is not very common at all. I never heard this happening to any other woman, but for me, my left side of my body is, I did have nerve damage. So my left side, which is my arm, that goes down to probably like these two. Well, you probably can't see if you can't see if you're hearing this, but my ring finger and middle finger, and then down the spine, and then through to almost my toes. And so the entire left side of my body for the last 11 years has been in a little bit of pain. It's been growing gradual this past year, where that pain went from a 1 to a 2 that you could hardly feel it unless you thought about it, to I'm feeling it all the time, and it's getting aggravated. And when it gets aggravated, I gotta get heating pads, and it's not fun. And I'm seeing doctors now to help myself. 11 years is a long time to wait, but that did happen. Now, to be transparent, I was in a car accident 5 days before, where I was in a 4-car pileup. I was in the last car to get hit from behind. The driver was going, I think, over between 40 to 50 miles an hour. So my car got totaled, and I had a really bad pain in my lower back. Now, there could have been something that had happened to my spine where maybe it shifted. I don't know, where it could have been, that could have caused a complication there in and of itself. And then when you have an anesthesiologist going in there with the needle, there could have been damage there. It may not have had anything to do with the anesthesiologist. I mean, the place, it could have been with the accident. So we don't know. We don't know if it was the accident. We don't know if it was the misplacement of the epidural. I don't know why the nerve damage happened, but it happened, and it happened. I started feeling that almost immediately after birth. My left thigh started going on fire. It felt like fire from the inside. And then I felt that constant pain. But it really didn't bother me. Actually, it only started bothering me in the last year. I can really feel it. Even without thinking I'm thinking about it, I can feel it. But that's, I think, pretty rare. I've never heard of anybody that I know who's experienced that, and it may have nothing to do with the epidural. It could have been the car accident, but that did happen. So pros, pretty much pain-free, labor, no complications to my daughter. Cons, there could have been potential nerve damage, but we don't know that. And if that was really the cause of it. And also that needle, it's going to hurt. So it's, those are the pros and cons. It didn't deter me though, because 2 years after that, I gave birth to my son Kurt, and he was a 9-pound baby, vaginal. I was at the Walmart of all places, and I felt myself drop, and he was placed much lower, so he dropped. And when he dropped, I could hardly move, so I'm waddling really carefully with my baby in tow, and my mom was there, luckily. So I was able to go to the hospital right away. My husband just came home from work. I'm like, we got to go right now, because I felt the contractions already within 15 minutes. They were 5 minutes apart, and they were much more of a violent pain, if I can describe it like that. By the time we get to the hospital, my contractions are on top of each other. They went from 2 minutes, they went to 1 minute, and they were on top of each other. And this is a 20-minute car ride from where I was living at the time to the hospital. When we get to the hospital, I am begging for an epidural. So the experiences that I had the first time did not deter me from wanting to get that epidural. I was begging for it. The anesthesiologist came in. I gave birth 50 minutes. So from at the Walmart episode all the way to when I gave birth, it was about 50 minutes to 55 minutes. That was the span of time. And so just under an hour. By the time the anesthesiologist came in, it was too late. I was, already giving birth. So I had, what I experienced there was, a good deal of pain, but I was really blessed to have a very short labor. My son came out, I think all the hospital staff there at the time, the nurses and the doctor, they came in, were very surprised because I pushed him out on my own with their awareness. He just came out very quickly. And I did suffer a pretty good sized tear that went all the way back to my butt. And I was sewn up for that. I was given a shot for the pain relief, and I was sewn up. And the pros and cons to that was, the pro was that I was able to kind of hop off the table relatively quickly when I was given the clearance. It was a really easy recovery. Out of any of the births, it was the easiest recovery. And I think a part of that was I could feel my sense of pushing, and I could know when to push. So I wasn't overdoing it like I did the first time with Grace. I knew when to push. I knew when to control my body. So I think that contributed to a lot of that. And so it's a very easy recovery. Of course, the con is it was a painful birth. I've never experienced anything that painful in my life before and even since then. But that was it. He had no complications. I didn't suffer any complications either. It was a good experience, overall. And then fast forward, 3 years after that. So 6 years ago, I gave birth to my youngest daughter, Alice. And I was planning on having a vaginal delivery. God had other plans. 5.5 weeks before I was due, and I was due on Christmas Day. God's like, nope, you're going to have a Thanksgiving baby. So around 5.5 weeks before what had happened in the middle of the night, Alice did something, I don't know, like a kick or a flip or something, but she ripped open the bag, and I felt a gush at 2:30 in the morning, like a little gush. I didn't really pay attention to it. I'm like, it's probably discharge of some kind. And I just went to sleep. And then in the morning when I woke up, I realized that my water had broke. And I was losing a lot of water. It looked like it was cups. I don't know how much it really was. But it was a lot of water, and it was flowing out of me really quickly. It looked like it was like a quarter of a cup or a half of a cup at a time. It was just an immense amount of water. I don't know how much really came out, but it just looked like a lot. So I called my husband. He turned around. He came to pick me up to take me to the hospital. I was really calm about it. I got my two little ones, who were 5 and 3 at the time, and I got them dressed because this happened in the morning. And we just went to the hospital. And sure enough, she broke that bag, and sure enough, she was breached. And she just switched positions, and we did an emergency C-section. And for those who have not experienced that before, basically a team of nurses come in, and I don't know how many nurses were there, but I would say at least a half a dozen. There were at least about 6 nurses, and they all had a job. Somebody had to put a sock on me, one sock, and then the other nurse put another sock. Everyone had a job to do to prep me for the surgery. And I was wheeled to a surgical room, and I was panicking. So they calmed me down. They reassured me that the baby was going to be fine, that she's going to live, which is the only thing I cared about. I just cared about the baby living and little Alice. And they calmed me down, which was important because my blood pressure had to be stabilized. And the pro side of this is that the actual birth process was easy. It was the easiest. I was just laying there. I was laying there while the doctor was opening me up, and there were nurses, and there was a whole staff ready for Alice because they were going to take her to a NICU in the hospital, which they did. And because they had a whole process for her, and they're talking about Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone's talking about what they're doing for Thanksgiving dinner in a few days, and I'm just laying there. So it was the easiest, pain-free birth that I experienced. However, the cons is that it was the most painful recovery. Because you're being opened up. I mean, every layer of skin. Of course, including your bag is being open, and your organs are being pushed around, and they gotta sew you up. So it was painful. It was about 2 weeks. I would say it took me a week just to kind of stand up straight, but I would say, a good 2 weeks of that was the most painful recovery. But it was what it was, and also, a little later on, when your hair's down there, in that region, in the pubic region, you can get ingrown hairs, and then that causes pain and stuff too. But otherwise, it actually went really well. There was something that had happened during that birth, and it could have happened for many reasons. It may have had nothing to do with the birth, but I think that there was a connection there, and that was, I developed a bacterial infection. So within a week of giving birth, I was getting the sweats and chills, and then 3 weeks after that, I experienced green discharge from the vaginal region. So I just thought, well, you know what? I have a bacterial infection, and it looks pretty bad. This has never happened to me before as far as the green discharge, which is kind of, gross to say, but, being transparent. So, and the fever and the chills and the hots and things like that was continuing throughout this time, and it would just periodically happen, and it was ramping up. And my OBGYN, said, this could be hormones and pH levels. They're trying to balance out. This is very common. In my 6-week postpartum checkup with my OBGYN, we did not do a vaginal exam, and we did not do bacterial cultures. He was just looking basically at the incision at the belly, lower belly. And 2 weeks after that, so 8 weeks postpartum, I found myself rushing to see my general practitioner, because what had happened is that I started getting fatigued, and I started getting really red. So my face got really red, my chest. I'm talking like I spent 4 or 5 days straight on a cruise ship, and I didn't put any sunscreen on. That kind of red. It looked like I came from spring break, and it was bad. My face was like a tomato. And I didn't take any pictures, because it was during the years I didn't take pictures and selfies and things like that of myself, but that happened. So I saw my general practitioner. He did every test for me, STD test, which I didn't think was necessary because my husband and I were already together for 11 years. But out of precaution, he did every test he could think of for STD related. And he did a vaginal exam. It felt like everything inside of me was on fire. Like you couldn't even, any movement of an instrument or any movement of a hand felt like I was on fire from the inside. It was so painful. I had no idea how much pain I was feeling from the inside. And I remember he took his gloves, he threw them down on the counter, and he said to me, "Why are you even here? Why aren't you with your OBGYN?" And I explained to him that I really felt that he was going to tell me the same song and dance, pH levels, hormone levels, go sleep it off. You're just tired. I don't know. And I said, I really feel that I have a bacterial infection, and I really feel I might be dying. And that sounds so dramatic. It even sounded dramatic for me to say at the time, but I really felt that there was something really, really wrong. And he said, you know what? I have to do more tests to say that you have toxic shock syndrome, but I'm 90% sure you have toxic shock syndrome. And we're not going to do any more tests. I'm going to have someone wheel you down to the emergency room, and we're going to put you on antibiotics right now. So they did 2 antibiotics at the same time, intravenous, so through an IV. And I was there, throughout the night. And my general practitioner was calling. He was fantastic. He was calling the ER doctor. And the ER doctor would come in and check on me with a nurse, and they wouldn't really say much to me, but I didn't really say much to them either. I was very lethargic. And so many hours passed by, and the redness finally went away. So the redness went away, and my blood pressure was stabilized. And they told me, "Oh, your blood pressure is going back to normal." We were really worried. And I had no idea at the time that my blood pressure was actually dropping. And they said it was dropping very quickly. And we were just trying to keep hold of where it was at. So, but my blood pressure went back to normal. The redness just went away, and I was able to get a prescription for antibiotics, very strong antibiotics, orally for the next 10 days, and I was fine. So, did I develop an infection because of the C-section? I don't know. I know that they put me on antibiotics at my hospital stay when I gave birth. Was it the right antibiotics for me? Was it the right dose? I don't know. Could I have developed an infection outside the hospital? Sure. So the pros for a C-section certainly are, for me, it was a very pain-free birth process. The cons was certainly, for me, the recovery, and also potentially the bacterial infection. So I really hope this, provides some clarity. Really have an opinion. I'm not a healthcare practitioner. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not speaking for other mothers out there. These are just the experiences that I had, and you have to make your own decision. I don't think there's a right and a wrong to have a vaginal versus a C-section. I think there's a time and place for everything. I don't think it's right or wrong to have an epidural or not to have an epidural. I think it's really the preference of the mother, and also, what your doctor wants you to do. There's a time and a place and of what's appropriate and what needs to happen. So thank you so much, and I hope to bring you some more good content on the Miracle Mama Show. And if you have any comments or if you have any suggestions, just leave them in the comments below. Thank you.